calling the meeting of the November 20th meeting of the Town of Arlington Redevelopment Board to order. We will first go through and introduce ourselves for the record and then move on to our agenda. My name is Rachel Zenberry, Chair of the Redevelopment Board, and I am so excited that we have a new member to welcome this evening. So we'll go through and introduce ourselves and move on from there. So Steve.
Steve Revelot, good evening.
Eugene Benson.
Shayna Corman Houston.
Ken Lau.
And we also have Claire Rickard, the Director of the Department of Planning and Community Development this evening. Community Development with us this evening. I apologize, it's been a long day.
Rachel, I wonder if we all want to say something about ourselves and Shayna say something about herself.
We could do that, so that you don't need to go first. Steve, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am the
Your experience
second.
on the board?
So I'm the second newest member of the ARB. I'm the gubernatorial appointee. I develop software for a living, and I've just been participating in these sort of town boards for a while. And I know Shayna from working together on the MBTA Communities Working Group.
Great, thank you. Jean?
And I'm Gene Benson. I'm a very retired lawyer. A lot of environmental justice and land use stuff. And for this purpose, I taught planning and land use law for about a decade in the BU's program in city planning and urban affairs. And I've been on this board for about 6.5 years.
Great, thanks.
So I'm Shayna Corman Houston. I'm so excited to join you all. I work for a nonprofit affordable housing organization, and know Steve and Kim through the MBTA Communities Working Group, and I'm excited to get started this evening.
Great, fantastic. We have a full agenda of topics for the spring to dive into, I think, a little bit tonight. So I'm Rachel Zenberry. I've been on the redevelopment board since 2019, chair for the past 3 years, almost 3 years, 2.5 years. And I'm an architect. I have a design firm in Boston with offices in LA and Columbus. And we do a lot of commercial work, housing work, so a lot of the types of things that we see in front of us.
Hi, my name is Ken Lau. I guess I'm the oldest
Most tenured.
Because I'm the oldest.
Okay, most tenured board member here. I'm not sure, is it my third or fourth term? I don't recall. I guess I am the vice chair, which I do not much. Rachel carries the weight of the committee here. Worked for an architectural firm, had my own development firm, and now I work as a consultant for owners or developers.
Great. So that's the makeup of our board. We all have a variety of unique perspectives that I really appreciate that we were able to bring to a lot of these discussions. Great. Let's dive right into our first agenda item. The first item tonight is a review of the meeting minutes from November 6, 2023. Are there any additions or corrections, starting with Ken?
Yes, on the third page, 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph up from the bottom. The last sentence, well, the previous one says, Mr. Lau's suggestion that he's okay with the 2-year extension, but wants to see evidence of progress after a year. It says he would like the applicant to be required to meet the current conditions. I want to say he doesn't feel the applicant is required to meet the new requirements of the new zoning bylaws.
That's right. Ken was not in favor of that stipulation.
So I don't know how you want to requote that, but yeah, it's direct opposite meaning what that is.
Got it.
And then on the second to last paragraph, it states that he thinks that 1 year is fair to show that kind of progress. That's not what I meant. I meant that it would probably take a year to do the architectural work and engineering work. So,
To submit for permit.
yes, it's been for permit. So giving a 2-year extension felt fine to me because a part of it was almost a year or more. And then you had to find financing and everything else to go along with that. So that's
Great.
was my explanation there.
Any other additions or corrections? Jean?
None.
Steve?
None.
I don't have any either. So is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes as amended?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
All those in favor, or we'll take a roll call vote actually, starting with Ken.
yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
Shane, I know you'll need to
Need
abstain.
to abstain.
And I am a yes as well. So those have been approved. All right, that closes agenda item number 1. We will now move to the second agenda item, which is the meeting schedule. And I'll turn it over to Claire. We had previously discussed some potential dates for our 2023 board retreat.
That's right. Thank you. Is this picking me up? Should I get? Okay. I have reached out to APD to see if we could get their conference room for December 3rd, which I think was the date we had sort of tentatively circled on our calendar for our retreat. I have asked for the room from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., but obviously we do not have to stay that long. We could meet from 10 to 2 or 9 to 1 or whatever people think makes sense. If I can't get that room, then we'll likely meet here in the community center, and I can reserve it again for 9 to 3, and then we can decide which 4-hour block we'd like to take in that duration of time. So
Great.
as long as the board is still okay with the 3rd, and maybe 10 to 2 or 9 to 1, it doesn't matter really to me how long we'd like to meet for. We can certainly move ahead with that.
Sounds good. I'd like to suggest that perhaps we plan for 9 to noon and have a discussion around that. And then once we work through the agenda, we identify whether that feels like it's sufficient time for us to work through everything.
Sounds
we
good.
have. If that is, but I know you were coming in from Lowell on Sunday, so I just want to make sure that time would be okay with you.
It's fine with me.
Okay, great. We'll start with Steve for any discussion or thoughts on timing and date.
I'm fine with the 3rd. I would prefer 10 to 1, but could do 9 to noon.
If 10 to 1 works better for you, I have no objections to that. Jean?
Either time on the 3rd is fine.
Okay.
It's fine.
Shannon?
Yep.
Ken?
10 to 1 is great for me.
All right. 10 to 1 work for you, Claire?
That works for me just fine.
Perfect. Let's do that then. All right. So we will set that meeting schedule. I know that I'm keeping a list, and I believe that Claire is too, of potential topics for the board retreat. So we will circulate those in the next week. We need to get that posted by next Thursday.
Okay.
So I sent you my list earlier. If I have any edits to that, we can work through that, and maybe you and I can just work through an agenda.
Sounds
That's
good.
For next.
Can we add to the agenda the status of projects that are
It's on
approved in
there.
the last 3 years?
You got, it's already on there.
Thank you.
Yep. I can just, why don't I just read through what I have on the agenda right now, and that way, again, I'll keep adding to it this evening if we identify other things that are added to it, but we had talked about strategies for keeping closer tabs on adherence to property developments with provisions of the special permit. Having a discussion, we'll see where we get this evening with regard to a discussion around potential warrant articles for spring 2024 town meeting. So if there's any type of working session that we need to have, we can discuss whether to include that at the retreat. We had talked about reviewing a draft of the site plan review application, updated rules and regulations related to site plan review. I think we should just make sure that we have a finalized 2024 meeting schedule, and we can go through that one more time now with Shana, who has joined us, so that we can make sure that that still is aligned. Past and approved project status, and we had begun discussion around potential urban renewal plans, and so I think that that's something that we could continue the discussion on. Anything else that people are tracking that I may not have on my list? All right.
I just wonder if that includes the Atwood House, because if it doesn't, I think
Yes.
it should.
That would fall both under updates for past approved project status and
Okay.
potentially urban renewal plan.
Okay.
Yeah, but I will make a specific note of it.
And I will have an update on the Atwood House at that time.
Great. And again, if there are other things that we think of this evening or that you would like us to include before we post that on Thursday of next week, please just reach out to Claire and to myself. All right. That closes agenda item number 2. So we'll now move to item number 3, which includes zoning amendments, preliminary discussion for the 2024 spring town meeting. And Claire, I will turn it over to you.
Great. So I put this list together from Rachel's running list of discussion items we were looking to potentially progress to a spring town meeting, including the Arlington Heights Business District and the reduced height buffer area, which I know this board has talked about on several occasions. The B1 zone, looking at the Walgreens site, rezoning cemeteries to a new cemetery zone or open space zone. I spoke with David Morgan also this afternoon. He is interested in looking at any conservation properties or potentially Parks and Rec managed properties, Parks Department or even Select Board that are currently either used as open space or are open space, a big park or whatever, that are also zoned residential. So that looks like it could potentially be expanded to include some other areas. The church properties in town, obviously, those are not necessarily R1. One that I am interested in, which is illuminated signs, could be approved via an administrative process. I'm not getting a lot of sign applications that are not illuminated, and yet, often they fit the zoning in all other ways. And I want to make sure that, in the ARB's rules and regulations, you have jurisdiction over most illuminated signs. So I'd like to be able to, or the department would be interested in being able to approve those administratively. And then TDM via residential provisions, and I think, Jean, this might have been something that you were looking to progress. I can't remember who brought this up. So this was sort of what's on the table right now. Also, we have a really great and rather exhaustive list of zoning recommendations that have come out of our recent plans. Kelly Lineman put this list together before our retreat last year. Some of these have been achieved. I want to say, over the last 2 town meetings. Some are still outstanding. Some, I think, are adjacent to other items that we're looking to talk about and progress in the next spring town meeting. But still, this list endures and is something that we could take a look at to bring forward. Additionally, we have some articles that have been suggested by the ZBA. Some are administrative. Some, I think, might require more discussion by this board. One is potentially eliminating section 5.7 and 5.8, which is the inland wetland overlay district. The ZBA and the CONCOM have had 2 projects that are where the inland wetland overlay district has applied in the past year or so, and the requirements have both been waived as the regulations of the Conservation Commission had achieved what the inland wetland district would have otherwise achieved without CONCOM's intervention. So those are a few that we have on the table right now. I don't know if folks would like to start talking about just the ARB. Oh, and excuse me, Steve, you forwarded me the zoning for flood resilience from Ms. Pam Heidel, looking at making some changes to the zoning bylaw in support of climate goals. And that's also up for discussion and consideration.
Before before we open it up, I do just want to mention that Christian Klein, the chair of the ZBA, did reach out to Claire and myself, and we have tentatively scheduled them to come in and speak to us about their proposed warrant articles on December 18th, together with the representative from the Conservation Commission, since one or more of them have to do with the Conservation Commission as well. Great. Thank you, Claire.
You're welcome.
So what I would like to propose is perhaps we first, I'd like to propose perhaps tabling the ZBA items until December 18th when we have the discussion with the ZBA and the Conservation Commission. And perhaps we start with the list that I've been keeping every time somebody says, we should look at that at the next town meeting. And then from there, see if, run through those, decide which, if any of these, we would like to consider for 2024, knowing that the Arlington Heights Business District is probably going to take a bit of time and energy. I do want to mention that I am also starting to already keep a list for 2025 town meeting, because we had identified that after Arlington Heights, we would look at East Arlington, east of Orvis Street, as part of the work that we did for the MBTA communities work. So if there's anything that we say, that we decide, for example, is a good idea, we're not sure that this is the time to do it, I can always move those to a future date. I'd like to propose that, and then we can see what else gets added to the list. All right. Ken, do you want to start us off? Priorities of maybe what we have on the list here and anything we think we might be missing.
I think I want to at least talk about it in the retreat. In the past, we met with the select board as a co-meeting and aligned our strategies and aligned what we're thinking of doing, what they're thinking of doing, and having a co-meeting like that would be will also be helpful. And in the past, they were interested in doing that with us. Just wondering what they would be willing to continue. Maybe set up a meeting for that to happen.
As we identify our articles for...
I would say something after our retreat. So
After our retreat.
So we say, here are some of our goals. Here are some of things we want to be doing. Does this align with some of what you guys are doing, or do you want us to reconsider certain things based on what they know, and just better communication between the two boards?
I would be more than happy to talk to Eric about that and see if we can come up with a appropriate time. It sounds like in early January. We need to do that. I'm sure the warrant will open, as it typically does, in mid-January and close by the end of that month.
Okay. If it doesn't happen then, it's not the end of the world.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't have to be around the warrants. It could be just how we see the future of this town moving forward.
I'm happy to follow up with the select board on that. Set that up.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other thoughts on the warrant articles? Your priorities on the warrant articles that we've proposed reviewing, or anything you think might be missing?
There's a lot here. I think we can just go over it and things will develop from it.
Okay.
I'm okay with what's listed here.
Okay, great. Steve?
Well, I do have a few may I ask a few questions?
Absolutely.
About the list? With respect to eliminating or rezoning B1 properties, what's the sort of like thinking or high-level goal?
This is, I think, Jean, this is something that you may have brought up during our review of the business area parcels as we were running in the lead up to MBTA communities. So, Jean, do you want to highlight your thinking here?
Yes, which will be a very low light highlight. As Rachel and I were walking Mass Ave and Broadway this summer, looking at what had been the proposal of the working group, we're like, gee, I wonder why these properties are B1. Does it even make sense to have B1 properties on Mass Ave and Broadway anymore? That was about the extent of the thinking at that point. So it didn't, it was just, should we look at that? Does it make sense considering the direction the town has gone in the past decade to continue to have B1? And if not, what to do with it? If yes, do we want to make any changes to it? Didn't get beyond that.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I could see like allowing some of those uses on secondary roads, some like feeder streets, and but moving them off Mass Ave makes sense to me. And what was the motivation for making Walgreens B4?
Gene, this is another one from the walk.
Yeah, I don't remember this one from the walk. I remember this one kicking around the ARB for years, though.
I mean,
what is it now?
I believe it's B2A, isn't it?
Which is pretty much the same.
Okay.
I think, Steve, a long time ago, when I remember we were talking about where we could increase density along Mass Ave for businesses, and Walgreens was one of the sites that was somehow tagged as being underdeveloped, underserved, and that's where I think that's where that spun off of.
Okay.
It's a very large parcel. It's in a very predominant area along Mass Ave. You know, there's other parcels. That's why I think when we get to our retreat, I like to bring up other parcels along with the Walgreens, like the central parking area, in the center of town. Other areas, there are large areas that we should also look into, but that could be a lead-in. But that's how that sort of came from. It's probably been on there. I think Gene's correct. I don't know. 4 or 5 years.
I remember Jenny talking about it for as long as I was on the board.
Okay. There's, I would like to, I do think, or I'd like to see the Arlington Heights Business District be kind of the focus or the main piece of work, but these seem like some reasonable supplemental things. If I could toss out a few more.
Sure.
One would be, I think it might have been, to Ms. Ricker, I think it might have been me who wanted more residential-based TDM from the
That came out of the MBTA.
MBTA communities.
Yes.
And I think that also ties in with some of the Connect Arlington goals in the plan list. This isn't on the list, but we have a special permit use in the residential districts called renting of up to 3 rooms, which requires a special permit. It's sort of a relic of our former definition of family that prohibited more than 4 unrelated persons from living together. But I'd like to have maybe a discussion about eliminating the special permit requirement there, because it's not really, it's very difficult to enforce without, outside of complaint-based enforcement. And there's some, fairness issues around that, I think. And yeah, in terms of I did send a zoning bylaw working group memo about zoning for flood resilience. And it was intended to provide sort of, at the time it was written, I believe the goal was to provide sort of like a menu of things to consider. But, things such as changing the definition of building height to allow buildings in flood zones to be elevated, and possibly, requirements that basements aren't allowed or a certain amount of freeboard is allowed or required. I think those are, would be worth talking about, particularly for, I happen to have an interest. I live in a floodplain. Along with a portion of East Arlington. So I think this is some. I'd rather see us get ahead of the curveball on this. That's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Gene.
I agree with Steve that I think the Arlington Heights Business District should be our main focus for spring town meeting. And I think we can talk during the retreat about how potentially to make that happen.
Yes.
I think updating the transportation demand management part of the bylaw to think about residential provisions is important, because we mentioned that during the discussions about MBTA communities and the necessity to do that. I think we accomplished a lot this year, and I'm not sure we should go back with a lot again. I think if we can get Arlington Heights done in the spring, if we can do something with TDM, I think maybe we should leave it at that this time, unless people like the ZBA come to us with things that seem to be appropriate for us to do. The other reason I say that is I think we need to either update the master plan or think about redoing it, and that's a big project, and I'm not sure we should be doing a lot of other zoning changes until we figure out what to do with the master plan.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to add that to our board retreat.
Yeah.
That's a topic, updating the master plan.
Yeah, so either, I don't know if we're ready to start a whole process of a new one, or if we just want to update the one that's there. I think that we can discuss, but whichever one we do, I think that could spread out throughout 2024, and I think is more worthwhile than picking off a lot of the individual little things we can do to the zoning bylaw at this point.
One question related to that I might have for Claire is whether or not there is an appropriation we would need to request, or you would need to request from town meeting to fund that type of an exercise, because that may be the thing instead that we push forward going into that.
Yes, there would be. I've been in very, very preliminary conversations with Jim Feeney about master planning and an appropriation potentially for spring town meeting. When they did the master plan, the kickoff in 2012, they initially asked for $100,000 to kick off, and then an additional 75 in year 2. That was master planning from, I think, not much. I don't think there was anything to build on at that point. So at least 10 years ago, it was a $175,000 proposition. So I've been trying to lay the groundwork with Mr. Feeney and let him know that this is coming.
Great.
I mean, I don't disagree that we should move on most of the things. I have a question about a couple of them that are on the board there, but I think they can wait, basically, is what I think, other than the Arlington Heights Business District and maybe the residential part of the Transportation Demand Management Plan on these pages and pages of zoning recommendations. I mean, some of them have been done. Some of them have been done different ways. Some of them we decided were not good ideas. Of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sort of plans on there, 3 of them we were involved in, and 3 of them we weren't involved in any way whatsoever, you know, and I think it's a little harder to, at least for me, to get my arms around some of the recommendations made by some of the ones where we had no input, and in some cases they contradict some of the other plans. So I think the next step on these 6 is maybe to go through them and figure out what's been done, what do we want to put off, what do we want to wait until we have a revised master plan or whatever, and which ones can we, you know, maybe put off till a year from spring to 2025.
Shana?
Nothing at this time.
Okay, great. I would like to add to, I agree with Jean that I think given the amount of lead up time, it was a full year for us to get MBTA communities to town meeting. We're going to really need to focus on the Arlington Heights Business District over the first 4 months of the year in order to present that. I agree that I think the TDM with the residential provisions we talked about, I would also add the reduced height buffer area. I think, again, we were fairly close there. We just really needed to come to some alignment around the specific setbacks and some of the other items. We just didn't have the time with everything else going on at the same time to fully vet that with the group. But I think a lot of the groundwork there is done. So I would suggest that that might be one that we add to the list for 2024. And I think that pushing some of these rezoning items in terms of what we do with B1, the Walgreens site, the cemeteries, the church properties, we may want to push to 2025. The other one that I think is a fairly simple, almost an administrative change, is the illuminated signs as an administrative process.
They can. We need to take a close look at the zoning bylaw, because I've read it as there can be administrative approval of most types of illuminated signs.
Let's add that to the list and just make
Yeah.
sure that let's vet that and decide whether or not that even needs to be done, and then we can put that one to bed.
Yeah.
And then
Can I?
yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt. I just forgot to mention, we still have the update of the design guidelines for commercial,
Yes.
which I think we want to get done. And in light of MBTA communities, I wonder if we want to do one for multifamily housing also.
And we had an appropriation
For
for
the
that. We
commercial.
just haven't spent it.
Right, and we need to, I think we should be moving on it.
So I think at the retreat, I'm going to add that to that as well. The question becomes master plan, commercial design guidelines, multifamily
Right.
design guidelines. Which order do we put all of those in?
Or can we do all three?
And can we do all three? Ken, any other thoughts on what we've spoken about to date? Dick?
No, there's a lot. I think we're gonna have to sit down and prioritize. And I agree with the rest of the board that I think the heights should be a priority. We made promises, and I want to keep those promises and really look at that as a priority.
So one thing that we might want to consider for the retreat is to come to that prepared, having all reread the Arlington Heights Neighborhood Action Plan. And the master plan, which also speaks to that, the sections that speak to that area as well. And we can send those out as attachments.
Yeah, can you send a link
Yeah.
for that?
Yes. We can do that in the agenda as exhibits.
That's a great idea.
Okay. Are there any other items that people would like to see ahead of the retreat related to the Arlington Heights Business District to prepare us for being able to speak to a process?
Well,
Yes.
aside from the master plan and the Arlington Heights Neighborhood Action Plan,
Yes.
I believe there was a draft set of district definitions, or basically a draft made motion for a district.
There
It might have
was.
just
There was.
been dimensional tables, but that would be another thing to review, I think.
That was in the package when we had originally started looking at that for spring 2023 town meeting. So yes, we can recirculate that.
And do we know the boundaries of?
Yes, that has been set.
That's-
So
okay.
we will also include the map.
Okay.
Because Kelly had worked through the map and it
Thank
has
you.
all of the addresses. Yes.
Terrific.
That's not fixed right now. That's just, that was,
It was just proposed. It
Yes.
is not, nothing has been fixed.
yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Yes. So are there any, so we had talked about the Arlington Heights Business District, the reduced height buffer area, the illuminated signs, whether or not that's required, and the TDM with residential provisions. Is there anything else, Steve, that you wanted to make sure that we got into this year?
I think that's good.
Okay. And then, of course, we have the 6 from the ZBA that we'll speak through on the 18th. And then anything else that might come in front of us?
I should just mention I went to or participated in the Clean Energy Future Committee meeting last Friday, and at the end of the meeting we decided that 3 of us, and I was one of the 3, would sit down with Mike Champa at some point and go over how the new stretch code will work and those sort of things, to see if coming out of that is any changes we want to make to the zoning bylaw to help move along the, zero emissions goal. So I don't know where that's going to go, but Talia was going to try to set up that meeting. And between Friday and now, as you might imagine, hasn't been set up. But so something may come out of that meeting. I just don't know what it might be.
Let me ask you a quick question. When you say the new stretch code, there was an existing stretch code that I don't think Arlington adopted.
Arlington adopted the enhanced one at the town meeting.
Yes,
Last
but
year.
last year.
No,
But
this
before-
year.
But before,
Sorry, you're right, spring.
Spring.
But before that, it wasn't. It was just the regular energy code. So the stretch code is something more. Has it changed than what was before?
Yeah, that's my understanding is we have adopted the enhanced version. So it is somewhat, and I can't tell you what the differences are between them. And one of the reasons that we wanted to meet with Mike was to sort of try to figure out what that would be and whether there was any interaction with the zoning bylaw we needed to be concerned about.
Is there something where we can learn about that? Because I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know what
I don't know.
enhanced and what is.
So
Very
perhaps,
close to passive house.
yeah, it's significantly,
Okay.
significantly more stringent. But if I could suggest, if Jean is going to meet with Mike and review that, perhaps we ask Jean to give us a
Yes, if that
rundown.
yeah, I'll be happy to if it happens before the retreat. Yeah.
Okay. And that's been adopted by the state already.
It was an option for towns to adopt, and we adopted it at Springtown meeting.
Okay. Okay.
One item that I would like to make sure that we get out in early December, Claire, we typically put together a schedule for any citizen who is interested in putting forth a warrant article related to the zoning bylaws so that they understand the timeline and the process, and thereby encouraging them to engage the redevelopment board as early as possible so that we can work together to help them refine their warrant article before they do all of the work of putting it forth and collecting the signatures, etc.
Would December 18th be a decent meeting to kick that off, or?
Sure. There's, we have what might be good to do is to publish, again, what the timeline is
Okay.
with the materials for that meeting. And quite frankly, it's really one that we can we've used it twice now. In the past, we should be able to just update the dates. We may even be able to for the next meeting, which is the 4th, and that would be by next Thursday. If you have time, if not, we can do it for the 18th. But if we can do it for the 4th, there's no real discussion or board
I think it's back.
action. It's just,
Back out of the.
yeah,
When the town meeting says,
We can-
like 4 weeks this, 6 weeks that.
exactly. And this is when you need to have things to the redevelopment board for review. If you'd like to engage us before, these are the meetings we have available. Contact, you, Jennifer, whoever you would like them to contact to make sure that they have materials and they can get on the meeting if they want feedback ahead of time. They don't have to, but if they would like to request it, we want to make ourselves available. And I can look for the older copy if you need any help putting your hand on
I'm
that.
sure we can find it. If
Okay.
I can, I'll let you know. Thank
Please
you.
do. All right. Any other thoughts before I open it up for any public comment on the spring 2024 town meeting articles that we will most likely be pursuing? Anything else? All right. This time I'd like to open up for public comment. Anyone who has any thoughts on what we've just discussed with regard to the ARB's 2024 spring town meeting warrant articles, please.
You gotta put a microphone up there.
Yep, if you come here, I will turn my microphone around.
Even better.
Steve's taking care of it. There you go.
But you haven't started discussing that chart, right? of
We're
the-
finished our discussion,
Oh,
yes.
you're- oh,
Yes.
Okay. I'm Susan Stamps, 39 Grafton Street. I'm the tree committee representative to the redevelopment board. I know some of you may know that we're working with David Morgan on a proposal for a new zoning bylaw that regulates parking lots more than it does now and requires trees in parking lots for not only shade and to reduce the heat island effect of parking lots, but also to help with stormwater management and to have bioswales in parking lots and that sort of thing, to not only move the rainwater towards the trees in the parking lot, but also away from the parking lot and distribute it in whatever way seems to make sense. But so Green Streets Arlington is working on that, and we have promised David Morgan that we'll have something in shape for you to look at your December 18th meeting, as I believe Claire has had some input on that, and I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. We were just discussing the timing, and
Yeah.
that is absolutely in alignment. So
Great.
thank you. Please.
Grant Cook, 16 Wollaston. I do agree with you that there's not a lot of energy for the spring, so the heights and parking seem very appropriate. But just watching it, you didn't mention that, and I don't know if you will, but the St. Camilla's property is pending something. I don't know if anything will ever happen to it, but there's been talk that there could be change in that area. And I guess the question will be, will you be ahead of it or behind it? So this is my point. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you. And if I could, Claire, I don't know. I know that that's something we've spoken about as a board. So
Yeah.
Claire, I don't know if you have any updates on the St. Camilla's
Sure.
property that
Sure.
you're able to share with us.
Yeah, so the update I have on St. Camilla's property is it's out for,
Forest area, right?
yeah, the part behind the Poets Corner Park. It's roughly 6 acres that's currently owned by the Archdiocese of Boston. They have RFP'd that property. I have fielded many calls from developers looking for information for it, and have, distributed whatever public information we have on the site. The Archdiocese has put it out with a preference for housing. The property is currently zoned R1, R0 even. And so, right now, under the zoning that exists, you could do 6 or 7 single-family homes or a 40B project. And that seems to be the general consensus, is that it will likely be a 40B project, whether it's a friendly 40B or the town decide claim safe harbor, I don't know. But at this stage, that's what it's looking like. I have asked about rezoning. There is little appetite for rezoning right now because 40B, is a possibility, I think if that is, ceases to become a possibility because we've achieved safe harbor or for other reasons, we would definitely be looking to rezone. I have had several conversations with folks who have asked, what would the town like to see on the site? And I've, made it pretty clear there's not a lot down there. If you were to put in however many units of housing were proposed, what about some retail space? What about some community space? What about, some sort of stewardship over the park? And so these are the ideas that are, currently being floated around. The RFP is due to close soon, and I want to say in January. I would have to check on that, but they're looking to make an award by early spring here at the accessibility. So that's where we are on that property.
Thank you, Claire. Any other questions or discussion from the board? Jean?
A couple of things I forgot. I thought that the Affordable Housing Trust Fund
Yes,
Committee
they did.
is going to bring an affordable housing overlay to us sometime. So I think that will be the other big thing potentially that we will be looking at and potentially going to the town meeting in the spring. And I think the sooner they can get to us, the better. And what I had heard through the grapevine was they're not sure what they're going to present. That's a good time to come and see us. When they're not sure what they're going to present, as opposed to they have their final proposal. So, yeah, that was one of the other things that I wanted to mention about that.
Thank you. That had fallen off my radar. I appreciate you bringing that one back up. Anything else?
They are meeting on November 30th. I will put that on their agenda to get an update on the affordable housing overlay and let them know that they should bring it to the ARB sooner, or the ARB, excuse me, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and if I can respond to what Susan said, it's good you're coming on the 18th. I just wonder whether something that says trees and parking lots even belongs in the zoning bylaw, or it just belongs in the town's general bylaws having to do with private property. So it's worth, come and sort of here, but I think it's worth thinking about where would it best be, zoning bylaw or non-zoning bylaw. And you and I had this conversation a while ago. I'm not sure what's better, trees or canopy with solar roof. So I think it's worth having that conversation also.
That.
Yeah. Or both.
Yes.
Great. Any other comments? Great. Good discussion. So if there's nothing else on the zoning amendments preliminary discussion, we will close agenda item number 3 and move to agenda item number 4, open forum. Either of you, anything else that you would like to share? All right.
Welcome to the committee.
Yes, it's
Glad you have an odd number now.
wonderful to see a full bench up here.
We are thrilled to have 5 members, and especially to have Shana with us. So, great. Well, if there is nothing else, we'll close open forum and move to new business. Claire.
Sure. So I have a couple of updates. One is they've all flown out of my head. One is that I am looking to make an offer to an assistant director by early next week. I've had some great interviews over the past week or so, there's no bad choices here, and so that'll be great. The planning department will then be up at full staff for the first time in 2 years, is what I've heard. So I have that going on. The second thing is that the submission to the Attorney General and the submission to EOHLC for MBTA communities were completed as of last week. Everything is in and is under review. So they went in with a notice from me letting them know that we would appreciate some urgent attention to both items given our the town's desire to participate in the fossil fuel ban pilot. The state is well aware of what we're trying to do, as is the Attorney General's office, but I did, obviously, alert them to that again. I think that is it for new business right now. I did say earlier, the Atwood House, I'm meeting with the developer and Bob and Niece tomorrow to talk about a potential project at the Atwood House that I will share with this board, obviously at your retreat, and potentially at the December 4th meeting when they're ready to come in. But there has been some movement on that project as well. It's not, I know that one's been really, really at the top of the board's mind. So there has been some movement. I am talking with the folks, and we should have an update for you very soon.
Great. Thank you. Any other items of new business? All right. So with that, we will close agenda item number 5 and see if there is a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
Second,
Take a vote, starting with Steve.
Yes.
Jean?
yes.
Shayna?
Yes.
Kim?
Yes.
And a yes as well. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.